All right. Welcome to episode 2 of the still yet to be named Jeff Delzell podcast. I really should probably come up with a name before I get too much further along here. And this is my first one with a guest. So this is a friend of mine, a fellow coach. His name's Guy Sumner. Also trains parents, coaches parents. Is a dad himself. Has 3 beautiful kids. And has been doing this for a while now, and met him through kind of a cohort of other coaches, and it's just been great to kind of follow along with his journey. And so I'm excited to have him on. So thanks for coming on, Guy.
No, thanks for having me. It's great to be on your podcast. I think you need to have a little jingle at the beginning as well.
Yeah, I do.
Once
need
you've
to
come up with your name.
Yeah, priorities name. I forgot to mention that he's from England. In case you didn't catch that, where in England are you? I don't even.
Just south of London, so you have to excuse some of my my blunt humour. Obviously, it's a little bit different for us in the UK.
It's gonna be great, but maybe I'll get more people on because everybody over here loves the British accent. So maybe more people will be on because they want to hear.
There we go.
Get a British accent. Yeah, definitely got to come up with a name, and definitely need to get a little intro thing so I don't have to come up with one every single time. But yeah, so I'd love to start just kind of with a little bit of your story. So I know that you've kind of shared a little bit of this yourself, but this was kind of, you were your first client, that you kind of went through this journey. So talk a little bit about how you got into fitness yourself, and then how you got into coaching.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So to be honest, all through school and most of my education, I absolutely hated anything to do with sport, PE. I used to be the one that would make all the excuses not to do it, to sort of to skip and just sit on the side. I was quite happy sitting on the side, and it wasn't until I sort of maybe got to the age sort of 16 to 18 where I actually sort of falling in love with fitness and going to the gym a bit more, and almost sort of sort of at the age where you're meeting new people, you're sort of a new chapter in your life, and that's sort of where I sort of thought I sort of really need to get into fitness a little bit more. So you sort of started sorting your diet out a little bit as much as you could. Obviously at that age you're still sort of living at home, sort of going to the gym a bit more regularly when you could. Obviously only certain sessions were allowed as sort of a youth, especially in the UK. And then as time went on, it just sort of became a regular thing. Sort of going to the gym sort of 3 times a week is sort of now just part of my life, part of my routine. Eating healthily as well, it's almost sort of becomes ingrained. You learn those habits over time, and obviously having a family as well, as the family grows, your diet changes, because obviously you're changing to what they enjoy as well.
Yeah.
And it's always evolving. It's never just a set sort of menu, so to speak. It always changes, and that's sort of where I've sort of stemmed from, someone that hated doing sport to almost getting into teaching it and wanting to coach other people, to almost find their love and passion for health and fitness again, to sort of get back to like a pre-baby weight if they're having kids. And obviously there's a thing that obviously the dads as well put on weight during pregnancies as well, and that's obviously the same for them as well, sort of trying to coach them through fitness, getting their passion back and almost building those habits again to sort of become a better version of what they are now.
Yeah, man. Oh, I love that. And just as a quick side note, I forgot to mention it earlier too. And this is, if you didn't listen to the first episode of this podcast, but this is another example of like just start and it's not perfect. So, Guy and I had this scheduled a week ago, and then some things moved around, and I got people hanging drywall literally directly below me right now. So if you hear some nail guns going off or other random stuff, that is what is happening. But we weren't going to reschedule because it's what it is. So just take imperfect action. So yeah, I love that. And you touched on something that I think is super important, that it certainly changes when you have kids, because things have happened, and you have your kids are older than mine. How old are your kids again? They're like kind of elementary age, right?
Yes, or 7, 9, and 11. So still quite young.
Yes, but they're a little bit more mobile and moving around and things like that. So how has like even going back to the very beginning and then over the course of it, but like how did your fitness journey, you talked about like just getting into it when you were in school, how did that change kind of through those different phases of life? So when you were single versus when you got married versus particularly when you had kids, and then maybe even as your kids have gotten older, how has that changed for you, from when they were, little, and my kids' age, my, 2.5 and a year old.
Yeah, no. I think to be fair, when I was single, I probably wasn't going to the gym as much. I know a lot of people sort of say when they are single, they sort of go to the gym and sort of exercise more. I think for me, when I was single, I was sort of more, I was out and about, wanting to sort of almost sort of socialize more than actually sort of spend time in the gym. So I think it was more when I was sort of started dating a bit more. That was sort of when I sort of went a bit more regularly and sort of going sort of the 2 to 3 times a week, and also finding the time. That was always hard, especially sort of when you're sort of you just sort of start to date. You want to sort of spend as much time with that sort of person as you can to obviously get to know them as best
Yeah.
as possible to move on to sort of the next level, so to speak. And obviously, again, once we got married as well, I was still going. Obviously, she was quite into fitness as well. We sort of lived quite near to a gym, so it was quite nice that we could go together. We sort of train together at the local gym. But again, it was always because we both worked as well, so it was always hard to find the time. But obviously, you try and make the time, especially when you're a relationship. It's hard to you don't want to let things go, and almost you have that you almost sort of become a bit sort of complacent with how you are, and you sort of get sort of stuck in certain ways. It's trying to keep it going, trying to keep sort of training, and it's trying to find a balance as well, isn't it? It's more, do you do something at home? Do you go to a gym? What's you got to find what's best for your family as well. It's exactly the same for when we had kids. It's Fitness isn't necessarily just me going to the gym by myself for an hour. It's let's go and jump around in the garden. I mean, my youngest, his favorite exercise of all things is burpees, which I know is as soon as you say that word, it sort of everyone sort of cringes
Yeah.
straight away.
Yeah, for sure.
He loves it, and we jump around in the garden. We throw some lights or weights around, and they love it. And actually getting them up and out, and even just going for a walk. I mean, they love being outside. And I think it's important as a family to keep active, because again, you don't want to be stuck in the fact that you can't get on the floor and play with your kids, or take your kids to the park and go and kick a football around. I mean, that's a huge thing to do at weekends. It's not something you want to stop doing because you almost sort of become unfit.
Yeah, there's so many things that you said there that I think are just so important. One is I'm going to kind of work backward from what you said there. So the ending, I think, is huge, right? That coming back to the why, right? Wanting to be able to jump around and play with your kids, and that desire to play around with them. And when they say like, "Mommy, let's do this," or "Daddy, let's do this," not to be like, "Oh, I can't," for whatever, like you physically can't, or you're too tired, or whatever it is, to like want to be able to say yes to do all those things, because when you're doing them, they're so fun. Like even if you're tired, right? Like, oh my gosh, I really don't want to go. Like I'd like to just sit on the couch right now.
Yeah,
But then you go
absolutely.
do them, and they're just so awesome. The kid lights up and all these kinds of things, which is so just life giving both ways, right?
Yeah,
it's the perks of parenthood, like otherwise it's
yeah,
just all the
absolutely.
all the hard, is to be able to do those things. But I love what you started to touch on there, which was, it does, and you said it even at the beginning with when you're married, right? At any point when you make a decision to do fitness, or whatever it is, or work out, or any of these things, it's a sacrifice. Just like there's a cost to it. So it's time when you're just dating or married, it's time with them. When it's with your kids, it's time with your kids, and it's a sacrifice. And when you're married and you have kids, it's not just a sacrifice for you, it's for them, and it's for your spouse too, because to some degree somebody's got to watch them, right? Like somebody's
Yeah.
got to be covering the kids. And so the idea of, all right, this is a cost that I have to do, like this is a challenge and I have to give this up, but the positive return on that is the ability to go and run around and jump around the garden and go play, and do all these things with them, where I can be there, like physically be there all the time, but what version of me are they getting if I'm
Mm.
not taking care of myself?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think and then you just said it exactly there as well, is taking care of yourself. Sometimes you almost do have to be a little bit selfish and sort of take the time out for yourself and do a little bit, sort of try and improve to become a better person, almost become that better role model for your parents to show them that,
Yeah.
you can exercise and still have a family, and sort of that's key. And they understand, they know, I might do an exercise session outside and they'll come and jump in. But they also know that if I'm at the gym, I'm not going to be there for hours. I'm there as a short thing, and then they sort of get me at weekends for to go to the park, kick a ball around.
Yeah, I love that because there's two sides of that. One, they see you doing it and they want to jump in and that sort of thing. And the idea that for you, when you were saying when you were growing up, and that's the nail gun, really, but when you were growing up and you didn't necessarily like PE and didn't like doing necessarily a lot of activities, but for your kids to have activity and fitness and taking care of themselves and being moving around to be part of their life growing up, and to see their parents do it makes it that much easier for them to get into it or not necessarily be as intimidated by it when they get older, because like dad did this, mom did this, and I did this with mom and dad. Like there's not that extra threshold, which is always going to be there, right? It's always going to be a
Yeah.
challenge to take care of yourself and to get into the gym and all these kinds of things. So if we can remove one barrier to entry of the intimidation factor or not knowing what to do or feeling out of place, but being like, no, this is what I like. I've done this for a long time. That can make a huge difference in their ability to do it and be that example for them for the long for as they become older and a healthier version of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially through, obviously we had the pandemic, and almost sort of it was very easy to almost not move, and you can
Yeah,
get sort of stuck in that rut where you don't move for days on end. Every day
yeah,
rolls into one. So we made an effort to almost sort of get out there and do something, because again, like I always coach clients with it, something is better than nothing. if
yeah.
it's if it's 15 if it's 15 minutes, that could be 15 minutes more than you did yesterday, could be 15 minutes more than what you're going to do tomorrow. But it's always sort of trying to find there's always something you can do. If you can't run, then you go for a walk. If you can't, I'm not saying, go to gym and sort of deadlift 200 pounds. You can pick up some dumbbells and start with them. There's always something you can do, without sort of, jumping leaps and bounds to sort of get into that end goal. No one starts at the end. You have to start at the beginning and progress from there.
Oh yeah, I love that. And that's literally what all of episode one was about, was not, trying to do all that. And I love you've said it multiple times, but just embracing the what doesn't necessarily feel like um exercise, things like going for a
Yeah.
walk or jumping around in the park or even outside, or we're gonna go shoot hoops with the kids, or my kid just loves to do laps in his little car where I push him and we do laps around the cul-de-sac that we're on, like literally just walk in circles around this cul-de-sac, and he's in his little car for half an hour. And that
Perfect.
might
Yeah.
not that doesn't feel like oh, I did a workout, but like that's incredibly valuable, one for
Mm.
you and two for them, because you're moving and you're doing something. And it's again, we can so drastically underestimate, I think, the value of movement and think that it needs to look a certain way in order to be productive. Like
Yeah.
I have to lift weights, or I have to do, I had to go for a run versus go like, and I love what you said, like what can you do, and thinking about the positive versus, oh, I'm not doing XYZ, but I am able to do these things and building on them over the course of time, versus just being like, okay, I can't do what I want to be able to do, so I'm going to do nothing at all.
Yeah, and it is exactly that. You sort of saying, walking around the cul-de-sac, pushing a boy around on his bike, is that becomes when people sort of say, well, how am I going to get to, I don't know, if you sort of said 8 to 10,000 steps a day, people sort of become very, I'll never be able to get to that. But doing exactly what you've just done there, going out,
Yeah.
just pushing around the cul-de-sac, that might be 1,000, might be 2,000. but that's a quick
Yeah.
15-minute walk that you wouldn't have done usually. It gets you both out. You get a little bit of bonding time with the boy,
Yeah.
and yeah, you see his little smile, and you get some steps in as well. So it's breaking it down as opposed to looking at it as 10,000 a day. Look at it as sort of doing small amount of steps as opposed to all in one hit, because no one can do that all in one hit without making some proper time, especially as a family. That's 10,000 steps is sort of an hour and a half walk maybe, and that's a huge sacrifice to family time if you're going to go out by yourself. So yeah, break it down throughout the day, and exactly like you've done there. I mean, that's it's doing something small for the bigger picture.
Well, and what you just said is going back to even it can feel selfish, right? But this is something where, all right, you live in two categories of like, okay, I'm taking care of myself and I'm being a parent, right? And there's other things that you need to do, but like with non-working time, right? I'm taking care of myself, I'm taking care of my kids, and somewhere in there, taking care of friendships and relationships and spouse and all these kinds of things, right? But those are the kind of the main things oftentimes for parents that we're focusing on. I got to take care of myself, I got to take care of my kids. And so oftentimes the kids just trump us, right? Which is natural because they are
Yeah.
more needy and things like that. But doing things like that, or I'm thinking about, you went on a big trip to Disney. It was probably a month and a half, 2 months ago now, right? A little
Yep.
bit ago that you went on this trip, and you're like, okay, this doesn't look like traditional training, right? But like you probably walked 15, 20,000 steps all of those days, and you're carrying backpacks and kids around, and you're wrestling with kids because they were all over the map and things like that. But those are opportunities to do both at the same time, where you're taking care of yourself, but you're also taking care of your kids, and doing those activities where if you can involve them, then if you're having a hard time with, it feels selfish to go on a walk or whatever, because if you're like, all right, I'm going to go on 2 45-minute walks by myself every day, if you got kids, like that's just not a realistic thing
Yeah.
for most
It
people.
won't. You just it just doesn't happen. It's hard to find that time. And as
But
you
you
said,
bring them with you, and all of a sudden
exactly, yeah.
now you're double dipping.
Yeah, and you get to spend time with them. I don't know, you make it fun, go in the woods, and there's loads of different things you can do with them. And yeah, it almost becomes a family activity as opposed to something that, as you said, becomes it's not selfish.
No, and even when you do take the time for yourself, like I think that we can get into this a lot. My wife and I talk about this all the time. Like it's not selfish to take care of yourself. Like it can feel that way. Like
Yep.
it can absolutely feel that way, and that's a real feeling, and we want to acknowledge that. But it's actually selfish not to take care of yourself, because like what version of you are you giving your kids if you're not taking care of yourself, and then all of a sudden you're not feeling confident, so you're showing them not confidence, or you're tired, or you don't want to do things, or whatever it is. Like you might be physically there, but not in the way that you want to be, or they want you or need you to be. So it's I'm like a firm believer that taking care of yourself, and I'm not like a self-care, like, all right, I'm gonna go, all right, this is self-care, I'm gonna go do all this, but like actually taking care of yourself in a way that makes you a better version of yourself for your kids is selfless. It's taking care of them, because you can't really take care of them well, or the way that you want to, if you're not taking care of yourself, because eventually you just burn out and you got nothing left. You're just like pouring from an empty cup and
Yeah.
everybody's like got nothing.
Yeah, and it's easy to almost literally fall in the door from work, and just sort of sit on the sofa and not move. And you have your kids sort of looking up at you, wanting to do something. And yeah, you're there physically, but mentally there's not there, and you're not gonna be in the mood to go out and push them around the cul-de-sac. You just sort of wanna lay there and do nothing, which isn't fair. You've been at work all day. You wanna sort of spend some time with them, and sort of get the best time that you can with them. So yeah, being selfish is is just as important, because without sort of spending some time on yourself and doing those extra activities, you're not going to be present for your children. It's more you'll be there physically, but not necessarily sort of there and be able to do the fun things that they want to do as well, and see in their faces smiling
Yeah,
when you are kicking a ball or pushing them around the cul-de-sac. That they're big things.
absolutely. No, I was thinking about this, I think it's just a very real thing. And I think, we can probably be pretty authentically raw and real about this. And I'm sure you had these moments in Disney, right, where you're like, why did we go on this trip? Like you're
Yes.
like, not like, all right, but like you have a moment where you're like, this was just way more than I, bit
Yeah.
off more than I could chew. And you have these moments, I think, as parents where you're like, what is the benefit? Not that you don't love your kids, but you have like moments. And if you're like, not that they're there for you or anything like that, but you have moments where you're like, oh my gosh, this is just all out for me.
Yeah.
And if you're constantly in the I'm just keeping the tiny humans alive mode, like all I'm just giving them their needs and just trying to get everybody to the end of the day, which is absolutely part of it, and it's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
But if you can't take the times to be able to be in them and do the fun, then it can feel like that more and more and more. So like the last couple of weeks, we had a bunch of like all the kids were sick, and um, different things with like childcare restrictions, right? They're sick, so like, all right, he can't go here, and then somebody who's supposed to babysit is sick, and all kinds of stuff, and just moving around. And I have a lot of them at home, a lot. When I got to the end of the day, and I was just like, man, this is just keeping them alive, and I was just burnt out, because it's not how I planned it or anything like that. And you're pouring out. And then to get then a moment where I just had my daughter, because everybody else was asleep or something like that, and she and I are playing, and she's like lighting up and smiling, and it's like, okay, those are the moments, but it's the moments where you can be actively present with them that make it remind you why you had kids, and that all of the difficulties are worth it. But those are fewer and further between if you're just like, I got nothing to give right now.
Yeah. And it's exactly the same when you sort of go out for just normal walks, where sometimes they'll
Yeah.
be really excited to go out, and they almost get to the point where you are dragging them along,
Yeah.
and it doesn't become fun at all. And kids do, and kids will kick off in the middle of the woods, as we've experienced many times,
Yeah.
and it's sort of then you sort of you turn it around a little bit, play a little game with them, and all of a sudden they're smiling again, and everyone's fine. But you've got to be strong to sort of to be able to drag them along as well, to be able to go and do that exercise, and equally you've got to be there mentally to almost sort of be able to turn that around. And also something else you mentioned earlier, it's being there. You don't want them to sort of give up asking you to come and play,
Yes.
which is huge. You don't want to, there are some days where you sort of like, no, please just go away, but you don't want that. But then
Yeah.
in years to come, if you keep saying that because you're not in the mood, you're too tired, it will come a point where they won't ask. And for that, once that happens, I mean, that's as a parent, I mean, that's horrible. You always want to be able to play with them for all the time they're at home. You want to be able to get on the floor and, I don't know, build Lego with them, or again, just go out into the garden and kick a ball. There's so many things. But yeah, once they stop asking, they're only going to stop asking because you've always said no or been too tired.
Yeah. It's the same with any relationship, right? Like if you think about any relationship in your life, it doesn't, there aren't a lot that just like have a catastrophic moment, or even when it comes to, any goal, right? There's not necessarily a catastrophic moment where all goes to crap, or one moment where it all blows up. Like that happens in the positive way. That happens on occasion, but for the most part, like things go gradually, and it's just one little percent. Like you got a hill, and it's a 1% grade uphill, right? That doesn't feel like much in as you're in it, but all of a sudden you look back after a mile and you're way higher than you were before, or vice versa the other way. All of a sudden now we're going pretty far downhill. And we can not notice those little 1% changes, those 1 degree changes where it doesn't feel like we're doing much. But over time, that 1 degree keeps on compounding on itself. And that can happen with the relationships, right? Or it takes like, all right, I say no because I'm too tired or I missed this opportunity. That can, deteriorate that relationship because, like, how did we get here? You get to that moment where you're like, how did we get here? Well, it
Yeah.
happened one degree at a time. It's the same thing with like weight or whatever it is. Like, all right, you're all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're 25 pounds heavier than you were, whatever it is, and you're like, how did I get here? Well, it didn't happen overnight. It was a pound at a time. And the same thing happens on the flip side of it, right? You're not going to all of a sudden then, we see this all the time, you're not going to lose 25 pounds in a day and a half, because
No, no,
you
no, no.
started working out. It's going to happen slowly over time, and it just takes those 1 degree changes kind of continuing to compound on themselves, and that's the positive or the negative, whatever the result is going to be, happens because whatever we're doing consistently ends up where we are, or that's where we end up.
Yeah, 100%. And doing something consistently. And that's one thing that I always speak to clients about, is doing something consistently for 80% of the time is far more important than doing something for 100% of the time for a few weeks and then fall off and then do it again sort of a couple of months later. That's why one thing always was, it's fine to be, or not be perfect. Like we sort of doing, sort of taking perfect action. It's perfectly normal not to be perfect. So that's why I think just doing that sort of the 80%, and as you sort of said earlier, you're not just gonna, you eat one salad and all of a sudden you sort of lost those 25 pounds and you're back to where you were. But equally, just that one donut you had last night didn't put you 25 pounds heavier than you were 6 months ago. Everything takes time, and yeah, doing the sort of the 1 degree changes is just as important as yeah, spending time with family and friends. It's making those consistent changes to almost become habits and ingrained into your daily life.
Yeah, for sure. Can you talk a little bit more about the 80% thing? Because I love that. But I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on it, because I do think that, like, if you were going to tell me somebody who's like, if I was going to pick two clients, if I had two clients in front of me, and for the first 4 weeks, one of them is 100% all, like perfect, and the other one's 80% in, like, I'm thinking the 80% one's going to see more lasting results. Like, I would be shocked if the 100% one, like if somebody's like, oh, I've eaten every meal perfectly for 4 weeks. I'm like, I don't know if you're going to still be doing this in 6 months. Maybe you are, but like, I at least for me, I see more success for people who are more like the 60, 70, 80%, and then can build that. So what's been your experience with that personally or with clients?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, 80% of a month is what, 24 days, 25 days. So if you could do it perfectly for those amount of time, it gives you some extra days there to, I don't know, if you're not feeling up to cooking that meal that you have prepared, if you're not fancying exercise, or I don't know, it puts us down to, I don't know, when we have children, for example, it's hard to, sometimes they come home, they've had a really bad day. You're not going to then sort of say, right, well, we've got this for dinner and I'm going to go to the gym. You've got to have the time set aside for those days that you can't be perfect. So it's almost having those people sort of tick off 3 things a day that they can do well, whether it's doing daily activity or having the right amount of protein each day. Just doing those 80% of the time, I think is far more important, because those are the ones that are going to get the lifelong changes. So, if they slip up and have a glass of wine because we've had a stressful day with the kids, do it. If you need that sort of that bit of chocolate at the weekend, then do it. Cutting everything out of your diet and sort of saying no to everything, it will only make you want it more. And so then that's where you're going to sort of slip up, and especially weekends, you end up binge eating at weekends if you're restricting everything throughout the week. So yeah, trying to balance everything out for a full 7 days as opposed to the Monday to Friday. So yeah, that's that sort of, I think that the 80% is quite key. And a lot of and my clients love that because it puts it down to I've got a wedding on Sunday, or I've got a friend's birthday on Saturday. Go on then, go out, go and enjoy it. It's not sort of saying you have to then stand on the side and, as we said earlier, you're not gonna put on 25 pounds overnight because you had that extra
Yeah.
slice of cake and a couple of margaritas. It's that
Mhm.
they're lifelong changes. It's, you go out, enjoy yourself, and that's what it's all about.
I love so much of what you said, but I think the biggest thing, and the reason why I think 80%, why I think the 80% client is going to be more successful is exactly what you said, because you're, when you tell yourself you can't do, like with your kids, right? You tell your kid, all right, don't do that. What's the first thing they're going to go do? They're going to go do that thing, like whatever it is.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't matter what it is, even if they didn't want to do it before, right? That's what they're going to go do. And so it's that idea that if I'm so restricted that I can't do anything, then the rebound is going to be the other way. We ride this pendulum and we think that it's got to be all this or all this, and fail to recognize that there's a middle ground where we can be and actually enjoy ourselves. Like the idea that I had a client who was telling me, like, she literally did not go to a wedding of a friend because she was, at the time, she was on such a restrictive diet that she like didn't trust herself to not eat cake or have a drink or whatever.
Wow.
She didn't think
Yeah.
she like literally didn't go to a friend's wedding. And now that's an extreme, illustration of that, but then, right, so that was when she was so restrictive, she was 100%, right? So she's not only missing out on social and like life, like literally life. Like she cried when she
Yeah.
told me the story. But then you go to the other side of it where like 3 weeks later she was off it and she was eating everything, and she, you know what I mean? And because you can't sustain that
Yeah.
from an emotional, from a lifestyle, and also like, you said it, man. Life without margaritas is just not really nearly as
And I know you
enjoyable.
do love a margarita.
I love me a good margarita, man. You know me, a good pink drink. If it's pink, it's for me. Um, but yeah, I just think that if we get so restrictive, then it paints us into a corner, because there's no other area in our life, like you said, with there's things that can happen, but there's no other area in our life where we expect to be perfect. So like, again, I'm going to come back to your Disney trip because I want to hear a little bit more about it too. But you think about that Disney trip, right? Your kid has one temper tantrum, which I'm sure happened at least once a day. You had somebody have a meltdown,
Oh,
at some,
100%. Yes.
yeah. And so, but like, you're not going to say, all right, this whole day was a waste, or the whole trip was a waste because we had a temper tantrum every day, because you also had these great memories, and you also had just good moments interspersed through that. So we don't want to write it off just because we did something maybe not ideal, but we also don't want to have the expectation that we're going to do everything perfectly, because there's no way we can live up to that. There's no other area in our life where we're expecting 100% perfection of ourselves. Even as a parent, like, you got to give yourself grace, and you got to give yourself time away. Like, this is going back to what we talked about. Like, if you're just on as a parent all the time, and you're just like, I will forever have more respect for single moms than I think for any other, or single parents, single moms, single
Yeah.
dads, than any
Yeah.
other grouping of people in the world, because I have no earthly idea how they function, where they're the constant, like, all right, I have to do this. And so you have to have the break, because it allows you to then stick with the other 80%, because if you look at what you talked about, the days, you got, 20, 30 days in a month, do simple math, you're shooting for 24 of them to be, you hit your three things, and we can talk about that. Like, you pick not everything, like, hey, I didn't do everything perfectly, these 24 days, but I hit my key action things that I'm trying to do every day for those 24 days, and then the other 6, right? Or I could go, I'm perfect for a week and a half, and then or 2 weeks, and then I fall off the wagon
Yep.
for a week, and then I get back on it. Well, you missed 7 days now instead of 5 or 4 or 6. You know what I mean? Like, whatever it is.
Yep.
Like, you're the all in and then crash down and then all in. You end up doing fewer days of consistency than you would if you just shot for the 80%.
Yeah, and it's like you get given a hot plate and you're told don't touch the plate, it's hot.
Mm.
What's the first thing we all do? We touch the
Yeah.
plate. So
Yeah, no,
saying
it's not really that hot.
but yeah, exactly, that's what we all do it. And it's exactly the same with restrictive eating. You almost sort of say no, you can't have that. Well, I really want that now. And you almost, it's
Mm,
in your head and it's in your mind until you've had it. So being
yeah,
able to sort of have it when you do want it is being isn't being restrictive, and it's sort of you're being a bit more flexible with what you consume. So and then as you sort of said, you can go to those weddings and have that cake and enjoy it, be social without having to worry of sort of falling off. Without you have that the 20% of the days in the month where you can do that, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the whole day. If you're going to a wedding, it's only going to be an evening, so you might just have that piece of
yeah,
cake, a few drinks, and that's it. And then we start again. We reset on the next day, and you carry on. It's when you sort of fall down and you can't get back up from that it becomes sort of days or even hour or meals. You start from meals to then days, weeks, and then it becomes months, and that's where it's hard to get back out of. And that's when that's where the help sort of needs to stem from there.
yeah. Well, in like what you were saying, like you have this. If you get in the restrictive thing and you have the obsession in your head of like, oh, I have to eat this, right? And until you do, but then what ends up happening when you do it is what you talked about, the binge, right? Like you've been thinking about it now for so long that you just go nuts on it. Versus like I had a client the other day who was like, I'm so used to having chocolate at night. And I'm like, well, listen. And because then she was like, I did this for a long, long time. I had just like, a chocolate bar every night or, whatever piece of chocolate every night. But then I stopped doing it and then got to a point where it was, I don't know, she'd been 3, 4 weeks without doing it. And she went like nuts and she just like ate 5 weeks worth of chocolate in like a night or two because she had been so kind of lacking it that it was like, all right, you're better off just having a bite every
Yeah,
night. Just have a one small bite so you're not obsessing about it, and then give yourself some other treat that you can have that's also going to be something you look forward to. Like you have some fresh fruit or whatever it is. Like you gotta steer into what you naturally want to do because the thing that I think people kind of get into their head when they're like, all right, if I'm not where I want to be with being in shape. Like I'm over what I want for weight, or I don't feel as good in my skin or whatever. I'm gonna go on a diet or a workout plan or whatever. I'm gonna get back to where I want to be, so then I can live my life the way that I want to.
yeah,
Right. So like I'm not gonna have a drink at this wedding, and I'm not gonna go do all these social things because I'm on my diet. I'm gonna get down there, but then at some point I'm gonna get to this point, and then I'm gonna just go back to all of the behaviors that got me back to where I was before because I'm just looking to look a certain way, but be able to do whatever the heck I want.
yeah,
And well, then you're just going to end up right back where you were. And that's where the yo-yo dieting thing comes back into play. Well, I lost 50 pounds when I did this, so I'm just going to go do that again, right? I lost 50 pounds on keto because, I did keto for a bit. And it's like, all right, well, you can do it again. But then whenever you stop doing keto, you're going to put all the weight back on because that's not how you actually want to live your life. And so finding a way like you were talking about that's natural for your lifestyle and not so restrictive, and it's like what I want to do and how I actually want to live is what allows you to keep it for the long term because it's what you're going to keep doing even
yeah.
when you arrived at that destination goal.
Yeah, and again, as you alluded to earlier, it's having those sort of those markers, those sort of checks that you can do every day. That almost it comes where you do it so much every day or 80% of the time for so long that I don't know, getting outside and doing 8 to 10,000 steps a day or drinking 2 liters of water every day just becomes part of your daily routine, and that's what you do. Unlike like ketos, you sort of said earlier, if you did that for 6 weeks, great, you may see some great results, and then you sort of then you fall off it. you haven't really, there's no sort of lifelong changes there. You haven't, it's not really a long-term consistent sort of flexible diet. You're going to end up eating all the fats again, and that's where the weight will start creeping on. So yeah, doing those lifelong changes are crucial for progress, because those are the ones that are going to make all the difference and make you stick to something that's flexible, that works for your lifestyle. And we've got kids, we've got snacks and treats in the house.
Yeah.
And that comes part of parenting, I think. There's
Yeah.
always biscuits around and things, so it's having that self-control. And if you want one, have one, but without destroying a pack of
Mhm.
Oreos in a
Yeah.
simple sitting. It's you just got to have, you've
Yeah.
got to have that in your head.
Yeah. Well, and I think there are two key things with that. Is one, like, there's nothing, I don't love the idea of keto because I think carbs are, one, delicious, and two, like, essential for you. But at the same time, like, listen, if you don't really like carbs, especially if, like, people who are gluten intolerant or whatever it is, like, and it's just easy for you not to eat carbs, like, go for it. If that's how you actually want to eat for the rest of your life and you want to eat lower carb, then by all means, if you don't like eating breakfast, then maybe intermittent fasting is for you. I love breakfast. It's like my favorite meal
Yeah,
of the day. I eat every day. I'm hungry like the second I wake up. Like, the idea that I'm going to wait until, 4 or 5 hours after I woke up to eat is just so unappealing to me. But, like, for me, I like, everybody's going to have a different thing that's going to work for them. So, but it has to be something that you want to stick with beyond the short term, because exactly what you said, like, your life is gonna come your way. And so if you are trying to do low carb but you love carbs, well, when the kids snacks are around, what are you gonna do? You know, like,
yeah,
how are you gonna handle it? So then you were coming back to, like, and I think this is a great point for us to kind of end on, is the idea of, like, all right, you have a couple, key things that you're focusing on each day, whether it's movement or walking or protein or water, whatever it is. Like, what are some of those things that you are kind of your our coach and one of our mentors, Alex, calls them your, I hate the phrase, but your bare ass minimums. Like, what are your things, like your benchmarks? Like, I'm gonna do these this is like my check mark for the day. I've done that. What are yours? And then what are some that you would recommend for people who are just starting out, because they might not be the same?
I think I always try and keep it really basic to sort of start with, because some of the people I start coaching sort of haven't stepped foot in a gym before, or don't really know where to begin. So instead of saying, just do flexible dieting, isn't really enough. So I always take it right back to the basics. So things like just increasing your step count to, we set a target to start with of sort of 8,000 a day. So it's almost sort of just getting your daily activity up. Another one would be just sort of drink 2 liters of water, and try and do it without sort of sugary drinks in that as well. So it's just sort of pure water. And the other one is to sort of try and add a portion of protein to each of your meals. So just sort of three simple things that don't sort of need, don't need to sit there and study books and record everything that you're consuming. They're just sort of three things that, each day I've just got to walk, drink water, and just eat some protein. And those are just the three ones that I would always sort of coach clients with at the beginning. I think it's important whether you're starting out or you're, I don't know, intermediate level in fitness. I think that sometimes we forget those basics. So
Yeah,
for everyone, those are the three main ones. If you can do those consistently well, then onto a winner.
for sure, for sure. I love all of those. Those are my kind of main ones too, is because there's going to be
Yeah,
days where you can work out. There's going to be days where but, like, if you were going to do what I call, like, and I don't know if I've ever actually posted this or anything like that or said this, but I say it to clients all the time. If there's like a hierarchy of importance for health, fat loss, whatever it is, like, number one would be your nutrition. Number two would be your movement. Number three would be your recovery, and that includes your hydration and your sleep. And number four would be your workout. Like, that's the order of
yeah,
importance for, like, where you're going to see your progress. So, like, I have a client right now who's, like, having some pain in her neck and, like, can't really do much in terms of working out. Like, can't do anything really upper body and is only doing body weight, lower body. And she's like, man, I just don't feel like I'm getting a lot I'm doing a lot with my workouts. And I'm like, you're really not right now. And that's okay. One, we're building the muscle of like just, that practice of exercise, which is a good thing to do. But two, like that's number four. And we can still do the top three. Like everybody noticed that what Guy said there. Nowhere in there was like go to the gym and work out. Like that is
Yeah.
not like hit your 2 to 3 workouts a week. Like that's not, if you're just beginning, like that's down the road. It's not to say that it's not incredibly valuable, because I think you and I both started like training in a gym. And so it is incredibly important to like, all right, hey, working out is great for innumerable reasons. But these other things of getting your movement in, which is just going to, one, great for your health and all these kinds of things. But in terms of your fat loss, right, it just increases the amount of calories you burn in the day without making you much
Yeah.
more hungry. Getting the protein in is going to help you stay full, so it's easier for you to eat a little bit less, and it also helps support your muscles. And three is the hydration, because that's going to help you recover, and it's also going to not make you feel like, oh, I have this gap where I think I'm hungry, and I'm
Yeah.
really thirsty, and all of these things, and so doing those things is just going to make staying in on a plan a lot easier. And I love what you said there about starting with things that are appropriate for where you are, not
Yeah.
like starting out doing, okay, go do flexible dieting. Like, well, that's not what is that?
Yeah,
And
it's not gonna. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's not gonna help anyone. And yeah, where do you even begin if you just sort of said that to someone? No one
yeah,
would know where to begin. And yeah, the workouts, as you sort of said, they're the fourth pillar, so to speak, of
yeah,
where it is. I mean, I have some clients that they might not do a workout in a week, but still feel fantastic. And doing those
yeah,
basics, almost if you can do those well, it then sets you up to be able to get to the gym and be full of energy and fully hydrated. So then you go and do
yeah,
a great workout, as opposed to sort of, well, I pulled myself in because, sort of not feeling 100%. If you're fully hydrated and you've had a good, a good diet the sort of the night before, that workout you're going to do it's going to feel incredible, because you've set yourself up for it. It's not necessarily, you're going to do the workout so then you might eat a little bit better later. If you can do the basics, then the
yeah.
workout is going to feel great.
Yeah, it's just gonna accelerate all the work that you're already doing.
Yeah.
It's pouring gas on the fire that's already burning. And that's really what it is that we're trying to do with nutrition and movement and hydration, and those things aren't sexy. Like it's not doesn't make good marketing material to be like, go do your walking, or
Yeah.
try to move, or eat more protein. Like it's not as flashy as like, this is the workout to get 6-pack abs. But like we it's a epidemic failure of the fitness industry to effectively communicate that what will actually make a difference are the daily, mundane, basic things, just like with anything else, right? Like most of your job is not the flashy moments, like the, oh
Yeah.
man, this was such a cool thing. It's just like you do the daily stuff, and you do it well, and you do it consistently. And then you're going to have the great workouts, and you're going to have some mediocre ones, but you're going to have that if you've done the consistent work all along, versus if you like just meandered your way through your job and never really did anything, and then expected to show up on an important moment and to crush it. Like that's just never going to be what it is. Or practice throughout the week. American football, you practice all week and you're not really doing anything, and then you show up on game day and expect to play really well. Like, no, you didn't do
It's
the
just not going to
basic
happen.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the foundations are crucial to anything. Get the basics right, and yeah, the rest will follow. I mean, it's yeah, consistency is always key. But yeah, once you can get those basics right, the results will follow.
awesome. Well, Guy, really appreciate you coming on, man. I love this conversation. Why don't you kind of tell everybody maybe where they can find you, anything, any last minute nuggets that you'd like to share, or anything like that. Kind of your little sign off here.
Yeah, no, thank you, and thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to chat with you. I mean, yeah, we could probably go on for hours
Yeah,
of just sort of
yeah,
just chatting. But no,
yeah.
I'm on Instagram and TikTok at GWSPT. Website is gwspt.co.uk. And my last nugget would be results are results, no matter how small they are. Just keep doing what you're doing, keep plugging away, get those basics right, and as I said earlier, the results will follow, and it will get easier as you progress through and do things consistently.
Awesome. Absolutely love it, Guy. We appreciate you coming on, man. And we'll definitely have to have you back on another time because you're
Yes,
right. Like
thank
I
you.
looked up and I was like, oh wow, that we're running over. So appreciate you coming on. And yeah, if you made it all the way through, thanks so much. And yeah, leave your, I don't even know if you can leave comments. I'm still figuring this out, but like reviews or thumbs ups or send me a message or anything like that if you found this helpful. And certainly go give Guy a follow. Puts out a lot of good stuff. And anything that you think for the podcast is that there's conversations you'd like us to have or me to have, would love to do that with you. So let me know about those. But really appreciate your time, Guy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.